totals $263 million. It's approximately a $21 million increase from this year's school budget. That is due mostly to the increase in state aid of $16 million and the additional CARES Act funding in the amount of $9 million in additional money. The first page of the presentation has the advertised revenues. Those are the revenues that were advertised in the newspaper prior to this meeting. They basically point out where there are different pluses or minuses in the budget, the major ones I just spoke of. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the advertised revenues other than to mention that we have $21 million more than we have the current year. The key to that is, where do we spend that $21 million? So the next page, page 3, is the advertised appropriations. The advertised appropriations is based on GAAP accounting. It probably doesn't mean a lot to many people. So page 3 and page 4 are part of the advertised and user-friendly budget that we provide for your reference. But in order for me to really give you a breakdown of what is in the budget, I would point everyone's attention to page 5. So the budget that is general fund without grants is $218 million. Of that $218 million budget, and I'll be speaking in approximates, $107 million is salaries of staff members. That includes the 40 new staff members that we included in this budget. Of the $218 million, another $34 million is for the benefits of staff members. So between salaries and benefits alone, that equals about $141 million. We also have $7 million that goes to charter schools, another $2 million for after-school programs. We spend $10 million on supplies, materials, and professional development, another $10 million to maintain the schools, $15 million for the added district tuitions, about $9.3 million on transportation, and about $3.5 million on gas, electric, water, and sewer, then another $5.7 million on benefits such as FICA and Social Security and PERS contributions. So, and this budget also has another $4.2 million, well, the first time, for capital projects for school improvements. So those are the major highlights of what's in the budget. I'll turn to page 6, which is the increase and decrease of the budgeted cost. The salary increase is over $7 million of increased monies for salaries of staff and new positions, $2.2 million for medical benefits. We have sufficient increases for FICA benefits and gas, electric, water, and sewer, both in the $200,000 range. Proud to announce only our general administration, we've kept those costs very low compared to all of everybody else in the state of New Jersey. Our transportation costs, we're budgeting increased transportation costs and planning for that. In terms of school and maintenance plans, the budget only needs $294,000 in terms of increased maintenance because we put $4 billion in the budget for capital projects such as school improvements, HVAC upgrades, especially air conditioning in the schools, especially Livingston, Lincoln, and Roosevelt School, and any additions we may need to the high school and other schools. I'd like to also point out that the charter schools alone mandated that we put another $735,000 in charter schools. And we're proud to announce that there is a huge increase in supplies and materials for the schools, the kids, $1.4 million, which is a 15% increase over the current year. I will now bring your
attention to make sure the schools are being run well.
detailed numbers on the tax impact.
In
The board and I are proud to announce that this budget is a 0% increase to any taxpayer in New Brunswick. So there is no increases to the tax rate of any taxpayer to a resident of New Brunswick. So we are proud to announce that we are not increasing the tax. And that pretty much sums up my presentation. I will now turn it over. Do we have any questions from the Board of Education members for me regarding?
not all animals, cats don't like, most cats don't like water. Yeah.
Sure. No, Rich, great presentation. This is great. Zero.
Did you finish your?
It's great.
All right,
Thank
Mr. Generone, so if the board doesn't have any questions, we'll move on to item number 4, the open questions from the public.
Okay, great. I'll call the first member of the public is Ms. Danielle Moore. I do not think that I do not see Ms. Moore in attendance as of yet, so I will move on to the next member of the public is Mr. Charles Cradaville. Mr. Cradaville, and could all members of the board and all other members of the public please mute yourselves?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Cradaville.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Secretary. I'm Charles Cradaville, live in New Brunswick. I'm the editor of New Brunswick Today. I did want to ask about the rental of 40 Van Dyke Avenue. Was told at the last meeting it's not part of this budget. I do want to know, when did it come off the books from the district? Obviously, it's been continuously rented. I want to understand when the developer took over paying for that property.
So
Mr. Generone?
yes, the rent for the budget, the rent for 40 Van Dyke, the P-Tech campus, is still in the budget. The Board of Education is still paying the rent for that. We are being reimbursed by Robert Wood Johnson for those rental payments on a reimbursement schedule.
Okay, and when did that start? Does that go back to September, which is when Lincoln Annex was technically moved?
The answer is yes.
Okay. And so the reimbursement, does that cover the entire rental of the property, or does that cover, only the portion of the building that's Lincoln Annex and not the P-Tech?
It covers the entire portion of the property.
Okay. Thank you. That was the main thing that I wanted to speak about. The only other item was, could you give me an approximate cost of holding the election, the annual school election? Is that in this budget?
Yes, it is, and I would say $40,000.
Okay, and is that up or down from the year before? I know last year was an unusual year.
Well, it's certainly up from the year before. The year before, there was no cost for any poll workers. Well, there was one location that was open.
Right. But so for instance, the mail-in ballots, the Board of Ed didn't have to pay the county to do that.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I am concerned about the proposed closure of polling stations, but I'll speak about that in the next meeting. And thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crowell. Okay, well, I will move on to the next member of the public that registered their intent to speak is Matthew Rivera. just need, give me 1 minute, please, to find Mr. Rivera. Oh. Mr. Rivera. Are you there? You have to hit *6, Mr. Rivera.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, yes, I'm sorry about that. I had some difficulties with my telephone. But yes, at this moment, I actually have no questions to ask.
Thank you. Okay, I will call you once we get to the regular board meeting.
Understood.
I will move on to the next member of the public, which is Ms. Linda Stork. Ms. Stork?
Hi, yes, good evening. I just have a question about the increase at the charter schools. Is the charter school expanding, or what did that increase consist of?
So that increase is a combination of increased funding for the same students they have, but the state does have some increased enrollments for the charter schools, yes. It is for some expansion. I'm not sure off the top of my head how many new students they projected, but it does include some projected enrollments for new students at the charter school. Charter schools, there's about 6 charter schools we pay for.
Okay. So, but you don't know which ones are expanding or how much they're, like how many more students they'll have total?
I don't have it at my fingertips. I can certainly get you those answers. I do know that the one that has the most new students projected is the Central Jersey Prep Charter School, and also the Greater Brunswick Charter School. They always project a few more students.
Okay, and the Greater New Brunswick. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, the last member of the public that registered their intent to speak is Jennifer Garcia, although I do not see her on the line. Jenna, if you're there, you can hit *6 and speak. I only see one line that's a call-in user. I don't believe it's you, though. Okay, so, being that said, Mrs. Solis, that concludes the open question portion of the meeting for the public budget hearing. We can move on to approving the resolution.
Sounds good. If I could please have a motion for item number 6, the consent agenda items, resolutions A through C.
So moved. This is Dale.
Second.
Take a roll call. Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski?
Yes.
Sheehan?
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla?
Yes.
Mrs. Shikaitis?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Corella?
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Motion's approved.
If I could please have a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Roll call. Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood?
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla?
Yes.
Mrs. Shikaitis?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Ms. Varela,
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned.
Okay. I'd like to say the opening announcement for the regular Board of Education meeting, which is scheduled immediately following the budget hearing. Do you have to let any other members of the public in for this meeting, Mr. Generone, or are we good to roll on ahead?
No, there's everybody who wanted to be. I've always admitted everybody, so no, we don't need any additional people to admit currently.
All right. Okay. The time is 6:24. Adequate public notice of this meeting was provided by the Secretary of the Board on February 16th, 2021, to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Clerk of the City of New Brunswick. The time and location of this meeting and all meetings of this body are posted in City Hall, 78 Bayard Street, New Brunswick. Roll call, Mr. Generone.
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski,
Yes.
Mr. Seawood,
Present.
Ms. Sevilla,
Here.
Mr. Shikaitis,
Here.
Mr. Spencer,
Here.
Ms. Varela,
Here.
Caldwell,
Here.
Here.
Mr. Solis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Generone. If we could all please recite the flag salute on three. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. This is a reminder that the reorganization meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 27th, 2021, beginning at 6 p.m. via telephonic conference call. The regular Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 27th, immediately following the reorganization meeting via telephonic conference call. If I could please have a motion to accept the minutes from the February 23rd monthly Board of Education meeting.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood,
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla,
Yes.
Mrs. Shikaitis,
Yes.
Spencer,
Yes.
Varela,
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. Generone. Item number 4, the superintendent's report. Dr. Johnson.
Yes, good evening. For the month of March, we have enrolled 9,736 students. There were 0 cases of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and 0 cases of suspensions. Our February staff attendance was at 97.8%, and our student attendance at 89.6%. I'd like to begin by commenting on the horrific and unfortunate events that took place on March 18th in Atlanta, which was directed primarily at Asian women, and also over 3,800 anti-Asian attacks the past year. It's extremely unfortunate reality that should be evident to everyone, and a reminder that all of us, regardless of our ethnicity, our skin color, our religion, our lifestyle, we must realize that we're all in this world together. We need to continue to work at uprooting racism, identifying our microaggressions, and move towards embracing, celebrating, and dignifying everyone's contribution to the human race. Honestly, enough is enough. I just want to give a brief update on reentry. On March 15th, we welcomed back our K-8 staff into our buildings, and yesterday, on March 22nd, we welcomed all of our middle school and high school staff back. Our teams have been conducting regular walkthroughs to ensure all safety protocols and procedures are being followed at all of our school locations. I want to just say that we have had a successful reentry for our staff, and we're looking forward to more to come. Our next phase for reopening continues as planned. As I previously shared in the past, for our students, we will reopen elementary schools for in-person learning for grades pre-K through 5 students on April 12th, and on April 14th for K-8 schools. Then on April 19th, we will open schools for our middle school and high school students. We are also currently in the process of coordinating with various agencies to facilitate COVID vaccinations for our staff who wish to get the vaccines. So far, through our efforts, we have assisted close to 400 of our staff with receiving their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. And if there's any staff, any district staff that would like to be vaccinated, information is provided on our website. I must pause and thank our district head nurse, Marilyn Crawford, for her tireless work and coordinate these efforts with a lot of agencies, and also her work through the night and weekends to ensure that New Brunswick is safe. And I cannot say enough about all the staff who have worked for the past year to keep the academic and operational work of the district moving forward, while some of us, everyone's contribution have brought us up this moment. So I do say, also I'd like to recognize my collaborative work with Ms. Arrington and the MBA leadership team, which has earned our district an invitation to the tomorrow, where districts from around the state will be in attendance, and I believe there will be about 340. Arrington continues to advocate for her members while not compromising what is best for our students. So thank you. And finally, I want to wish all of you a very safe and refreshing spring break. I know we need it. I'm certain that everyone could use some time to unplug and unwind. Whatever you do, take some time to rest and replenish yourself. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. If I could please have a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. General?
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski, Ms. Sevilla,
Yes.
Titus,
Yes.
Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Ms. Varela,
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
On item number 5, the student representative.
That Ms. Nemhard is this evening. So we can move on to the next report.
Very well. Item number 6, the facility committee report. Mr. Spencer?
Yes, Madam President. As we continue to make progress on the new Lincoln School at 50 Jersey Avenue, the engineering team has almost completed the civil engineering drawings needed for state, local, and county approvals. They are scheduled to be done by the beginning of April. On parallel course, our architect has made the submission to the Department of Education for schematic design approval, and they are currently advancing the drawings to the more detailed design development stage. The activity on 50 Jersey Avenue site has started. The environmental consultant has been on site performing testing related to concrete and soil in accordance to the DEP. Over the next few weeks, the team will be performing a flow test to determine water pressure and performing additional soil borings samples needed to advance the design of the new school. Additionally, a new fence will be installed around the site to ensure that the site is secure. Soil excavation and related foundation work is scheduled to start in June, which is in the line with the overall schedule to complete the new school by August 2023. We are conditioning projects at our 3 older schools. Our architects of record have been authorized to move forward with the designs needed to install air conditioning and related electrical upgrades at Lincoln, Livingston, and Roosevelt School. Design work has started, and we expect construction work to start at all 3 schools in the next few weeks. That, Madam President, concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spencer. That's a wonderful report. I'm glad to hear about the air conditioning units at the older schools. We'll move on to item number 7, the Athletic Committee report. Mrs. Sadowski?
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. The March sports update. Basketball and bowling have concluded on March 5th. Winter track was February 11th and is continuing till March 31st. Girls volleyball and wrestling began on March 1st, practice, and season began March 16th. Competition for wrestling, April 28th. Also today, if you weren't busy, our young ladies on our wrestling team were being live streamed on video of their wrestling match. And in fact, their wrestling match took place outside in the courtyard of the cafeteria at New Brunswick High School. Tennis and baseball and softball and spring track begin on April 1st and will conclude in June. Winter athlete recognition, the GMC outstanding as picked by the athletes themselves was Tiana Riles for girls basketball with a 4.2 GPA, Jashawn Height for bowling with a 4.0 GPA, Precious Camara track 3.87 GPA, and Brian Latham boys basketball 3.15 GPA. Again, the continued support of Play It Smart has really made a difference. Our girls basketball team was also awarded a GMC Sportsmanship Award was awarded to the New Brunswick girls basketball team. Congratulations, ladies, for outstanding sportsmanship. In the all-white division, second team, Alexandria Tucker and Ismail Martinez were picked. For boys basketball all-red division, first team, Josiah Brown. And congratulations to those athletes. Our Curly Borbor is a junior this year at New Brunswick High School, and currently she is ranked #1 in the state of New Jersey and #2 in the country. She is the current state champion in her weight class. Donna Walk, the reigning GMC champion in her weight class. Ryan Garcia, he's a junior, is currently ranked #12 in New Jersey in his weight class. First match for the boys is tomorrow at Edison, and as I said, our young ladies were, first game occurred today, and it was at St. Thomas. And the scholarship signing, Mar Perez, was signed by St. Elizabeth's College for men's soccer. And that concludes my report. I do need a motion to accept the bank reconciliation.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. General?
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood,
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla, Mrs. Shikaitis,
Yes.
Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Ms. Varela,
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item number 8, the Curriculum and Policy Committee report. Mrs. Seawood?
Okay. The Curriculum and Policy Committees met last week. We had 2 presentations by members of our curriculum and instruction team. The first was by the Supervisor of Instructional Technology, Carla Segura, and she demonstrated how to extend the laptop display and using a second monitor or projector so that there's no need to split the screen. This technique allows teachers and staff to present their screen on one display and the students and participants on the other display during a Google Meet. Also, we were informed the district has purchased headsets for all teachers and hybrid students so that they can interact with students who are at home virtually without interference. And all of these efforts are an attempt to continue to refine and improve on our offerings to assist our students. The second presentation was Ms. Hill, the Assistant Superintendent, who shared the results of the latest remote learning survey. And these surveys were distributed to staff, parents, students. We received about 1,800 responses, which I thought was a representative number, and 50% of the responses came from students, which is good, and from grades 3 through 5. And these are both very important grades. Results were positive with the highest percentage and very satisfied or satisfied when it came to rating the following areas of remote instruction: content organization, daily structure, schedule, consistent expectations, teacher-district communication, Google Meets, decreased social issues, extended day opportunities, independent work for students, homework, assessment, evaluation, curriculum, and technology. The surveys identified trends based on the comments received. Need to find more opportunities for students to work offline, utilizing paper-based materials and less digital activities. In that regard, need to increase consumable school supply items and mental health resources. So just to remind everyone, we're constantly discussing ways, evaluating what we're doing, discussing ways to improve our services to our students. We wanted to highlight two of our teachers, Miss Sean Bird, a resource inclusion teacher at McKinley, published an inspiring piece in NewJersey.com. She noted that the strides our district has taken during this pandemic, as well as her own, to find multiple ways to serve the school community. We also want to congratulate the 5th grade science students in Miss Brenda Edwards-Miller's class at Woodrow Wilson, and the 6th through 8th grade science students in Miss Erica Fidecaro's G&T class at Lincoln Annex for being chosen to compete in the 2021 Virtual STEAM Tank Challenge Regional Competition. So these are just two things we wanted to highlight at this time. During the meeting, we reviewed the also also want to announce the parent university continues to meet, which has worked out well, and we feel like the parents are becoming more engaged and are benefiting from our efforts. The advisory committee for dual language had a presentation. I believe that was last week. And we're in the process of making plans for our summer school curriculum. Curricula that we're recommending be approved, and that's the computer integrated manufacturing curriculum, which is in use for P-TECH, and this is a new program. A number of resolutions, but nothing, the resolutions as well as the curriculum is included in the consent agenda to be voted on later. And I think that is it. If any members of the committee want to add something that I've forgotten, please do so at this time.
Thank you for your thorough report, Mrs. P. Wood.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. We'll move on to item number 9, the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey. Dr. Caldwell, if you could please give us your report.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. The Educational Services Commission of New Jersey, the largest special needs district in the state. I would like to give once a year a report on giving the size of the organization. So the commission's budgets represent approximately $107 million, about 1,052 people, staff. As far as transportation routes, there are 32 districts that the commission is working with on transportation, 683 daily routes, about 5,700 students to 154 destinations. So even during the pandemic, it's been very, very active. So just wanted to share that with the community, and that's my report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caldwell. We will now move on to item number 10, which is my report. As everyone knows, March is Women's History Month, and the city of New Brunswick this month unfortunately lost a legend. Mrs. Blanquita Valenti was a woman from our own city and a strong person in our community who really devoted her whole life to servicing the public. Ms. Valenti was the first Latina to serve on the New Brunswick Board of Education. She also served on the New Brunswick City Council, and she was also a member of the Middlesex County Chosen Freeholders, which is now known as the Commissioners. Ms. Valenti was a founding member of the Puerto Rican Action Board, along with being a chairperson of their Board of Trustees. She will be greatly missed, and if we could just please have a moment of silence for her. Thank you, everyone, for the moment of silence for Ms. Valenti. We will now move on to item number 11, the public comments portion. Mr. Janaro.
Thank you, Mrs. Solis. I will call the first member of the public to speak, Ms. Danielle Moore. Ms. Moore.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. If you can answer my question, please. Can you please tell me how the teachers check in every morning for school?
They do so virtually.
But does it is so with someone to the office?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Is that with the attendance office, your office? How does the teachers do to where? And the reason why I'm asking, due to where I've been extremely seeing a lot of teachers absent, where no classes with some of the teachers. That's my concern. Why I'm asking.
Now, do you have a specific school in mind?
New Brunswick
Mrs.
High
Moore,
School?
I'm trying to just understand your question. You're saying that you are personally seeing now, and for the record, do you have any children enrolled currently in the district?
Yes, New Brunswick High School. That's why I'm saying with my son, due to where with a lot of times the teachers don't show up. I don't know if they're having internet actions, but yes, it is a situation. I'm concerned.
Okay. Now, I would highly suggest that you check your son's schedule on course. I know that some of the classes had schedule changes starting for marking period number 3.
I know the changes, and like I said, I will get to that. But I still think you need to look into making sure, just like you did with the children, due to where how they checked in the morning didn't mean that they stayed in for the whole class. And I hope you really look into that. With the teachers, because like I said, I've been seeing it. Maybe I'll start taking pictures of it. Maybe I will send it to you, how sometimes the teachers aren't there as well. But I will move on to another thing with the system. I have to say I'm very upset. I can't believe how you changed the new schedule to cut back on the kids' school time from 8 o'clock to 12:30, where the way you have the schedule, it's like, wow, the kids aren't even really learning the same. Where English, algebra, science, social studies, those are major classes through all school year. Now only 2 marking periods. Now a child has, shopping, art class, okay, Spanish. What I have to say, these kids they're not even learning because they're in school, but wow, how could you change that? Take away school time from the kids where they need super help.
I will say this, Mrs. Moore. I know that during the afternoon, especially for the high school, there is small group instruction. And also, even when the students are in school in person, there are electives for the students to take. So even if there is an art elective or another elective that they take, this will occupy their time and they have assignments. So again, if there is an issue with your own child's teachers not being present, any parent, not just yourself, any parent, not just yourself, is welcome to call Mr. Redler to voice their concerns.
I don't need you to kill my time, but okay. But like I said, my concern is, wow, for the major classes, why did you only have it 2 marking periods where major classes were all year long is what I'm saying, where you're cutting back with school. I have to say, it's New Brunswick where you're not even learning as much anymore. Due to where every century started with these Chromebooks, the kids I can tell you, don't even know how to write. They don't write cursive. Too much lacking is going back on New Brunswick, and I feel, wow, very bad, and it's going to affect a lot of these kids due to where will you really be able to go to college? I still just don't see my whole point. It's, like I said, 2 marking periods of subjects, and then 2 marking periods. What happened to the whole school from 8 o'clock to 2:30, major classes through the whole year?
So, Mrs. Moore, I don't know if you're familiar with the history of the New Brunswick High School schedule, but throughout the years, the schedule has changed. I know when I personally attended New Brunswick High School, it was block scheduling, and right before COVID happened, we were doing like an A-B schedule, which was a white day and a blue day. And now what we're doing is every single day, but shorter class times. And this is also to keep in mind the fact that students need to have less screen time. So again, if you have an issue with a teacher reporting to their assigned class for your child, that is a concern that needs to be voiced directly to the principal. Aside from that, the students are still receiving all of the instructional time that is required for their education.
So the way that I see that you did it, it used to be where school was from 8 to 2:30. Now school is from 8 to 12:30, but when it was 8 to 2:30, that was, I believe, I'm not sure which days, Tuesdays and Thursday, you had after school. So instead of doing the after school, you cut back on the hours for kids to be helped. Is that what you really did?
What you need to know, Ms. Moore, is that the amount of minutes of all the core classes have remained the same during the pandemic. And if you're having an issue with your child's schedule personally, or any other parent that's listening in on this meeting, if you're having an issue with your child's schedule personally, you need to reach out to the school directly. But the number of minutes for all of the core classes have remained the same during the pandemic.
Okay, I have it. Well, my question is, why do you stop at 12:30?
Ms. Moore, but we are past your time. Is there one last thing you wanted to state?
Yes, I'm just trying to understand where you're saying all of the classes are the same amount. If school was 12:30 and now it's 12:30, how are you really saying that they're learning the same amount of time?
Well, I've just explained that to you, and I don't know how else to reiterate it.
That's
So unless you have another question, I believe your time is done.
I thank you for taking the time to answer me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I'll now move on to the next member of the public, Mr. Charles Cradable. Mr. Cradable?
Good evening, Charles Cradaville. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. I do want to echo the sentiments about Blanquita Valente and say rest in peace and sincere condolences to her friends and family. There is an election coming up here in New Brunswick on April the 20th. And I mentioned earlier, I'm concerned about a plan to eliminate 6 of the 14 voting locations that would normally be open. Can somebody tell me, Madam President, what role did the Board of Ed play in eliminating those 6 locations or proposing that?
The New Brunswick Board of Education, Mr. Cradaville, plays absolutely no role in the locations for casting your ballots during election time.
Okay. Well, I'll read a quote then from the County Counsel, Thomas Kelso. He says, quote, "It's my understanding that the Board of Elections, the municipal clerk, and also the school board, particularly in New Brunswick, reviewed the polling locations." And later he says, all the appropriate boards all concurred that the consolidation from 14 to 8 locations was appropriate. So is he mistaken? Perhaps Mr. Janarone could enlighten us if the Board of Education was consulted about this decision or signed off on this decision or not?
Mr. Janarone, do you have anything else to add from what I just said?
No, I think you're taking things out of context. As always, Mr. Cradable, the Board of Education has no role in deciding what locations are. The city does. They tell us where they are. As a matter of fact, for this election, the Board of Education was asked to add a location, which we did. So the board, all the locations that are school board buildings that have always been normal locations are open, and in fact, we've added a location upon the city's request.
Well, I'm not aware of what location you've added. What about Roosevelt School? Is that going to be open or closed?
That is not a selection site for school board election.
Really? There's not been voting at the Roosevelt School for school board elections before?
I am not involved in that, and I don't think it has been, no, not to my recollection. But again, I'm not involved nor anyone in the school board in terms of choosing election sites for school board elections or primary elections or general elections.
Okay. Well, then I'll move on to my next question, which then is for you, Madam Chair, since you're a candidate in that race, is do you support closing those 6 polling locations, or would you like to see all of them open?
Personally, Mr. Cradaville, I believe in accessibility for everyone, and I personally enjoyed having the mail-in ballots sent to everyone like they were last year from the Board of Elections. I think it was very convenient and gave residents additional time to cast their ballots. So in the future, if everyone could do mail-in ballots as an option, I think it does help out with accessibility. But as far as locations, again, I would like more locations to be available so long as it fits within our budget. I'm all for accessibility.
Okay, and to that point, then, what is the budget? What would it cost to open up an extra polling place, approximately ballpark?
I don't know if Mr. Janarone has that answer, how much it costs to run each single polling site.
I don't know. And
I think it has to do with the number of machines that are used at that particular polling site. But again, like Mr. Janarone mentioned, that is something that the Board of Education has not had a say in as of yet. And so if you have another question, I'm willing to hear it.
Well, thank you. I guess, I'll just make a comment that, closing these locations is voter suppression. It was nice to have the mail-in ballots sent to everyone last year because we were in the heat of the pandemic, but that's not going to be done this year. And because of that, it's inappropriate to have any less than the full number of polling locations. We want people to vote in these elections, right? I mean, do you and your fellow board members support having the elections? Because I know some of the board members did not always support that and were in favor of keeping it under the mayor's control. Do you think it's a good idea to have elections for school board?
Absolutely, Mr. Cradaville. I think it's an excellent way for the community to voice their opinions on who should be in charge of running the school board. And if you have any other concerns, not just you, but anyone else listening this evening, their concerns regarding the elections should be taken to the Middlesex County Board of Elections and not the Board of Education.
Okay, well, absolutely going to bring them that concern. Their meeting is April 1st, and maybe you'll join us there in support of having more polling locations because, what they're asking folks to do in some cases is travel more than a mile, sometimes more than 2 miles, crossing over highways. This is not facilitating voter participation. This is making it much harder, especially for communities of color, low income folks, renters. Those communities are the ones that are paying the price. And I think that all but 2 of the board members are going to be in areas where your voting place is not going to be changed. But for instance, all of the public housing residents up at Schwartz Homes, Robeson Village, they will be affected. The Tove Manor apartments, they'll be affected. So it's great if folks can request that mail-in ballot and vote by mail. But since that's not automatically taking place and the sending of the ballots will not automatically take place, it's my position, and I would argue common sense, that all of the voting locations should be open, and anything less than that is suppressing the vote. So I hope you'll take a strong stand against suppressing the vote and encourage everybody to come out. I'm certainly encouraging everybody to learn about the candidates and make sure they vote either by mail or in the April 20th voting locations, and I'm pushing for the Board of Elections to open up all of them.
We've got about 10 seconds left.
I was just going to say there's no good reason to close the polling places. If anybody has one, say it, but I haven't heard a good reason yet, so they should all be open. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next member of the public. Mr. Rivera, Matthew Rivera. The microphone is yours, sir.
Yes. Can you all hear me fine?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Good evening, members of the board. I would just like to further elaborate on a few of the concerns shared by myself, my peers, and certain members of the community pertaining to the closing, well, at least planned closing of the polling locations. So for the general location, this course of action obviously made sense. With the number of voters that came out, it would have been nearly impossible for social distancing precautions to be safely implemented and enforced. However, New Brunswick school elections don't have nearly the same voter turnout, and as such, the risk of COVID spreading is significantly lower. And in addition, fewer polling locations, as common sense would dictate, would result in the opposite intended effect, instead forcing voters into closer quarters of one another. With that having been stated, I guess, is there any avenue for which the board would be able to push for the opening of more polling locations so as to, facilitate the voter participation within our electoral process?
For this upcoming election, I do believe it is too late to make any changes to the polling sites that have been designated because 3 weeks away. But that is something that we can take under advisement for future elections.
Okay. And that's all I had to say at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I will move on to the next member of the public that requested to speak, Ms. Stork, Ms. Linda Stork. The floor is yours.
Yes. No, I'm new. Okay. Yes. Good evening again. So, yeah, that concerns me too. And I would not have. I mean, I was very surprised when Mr. Kelso specifically said that, the Board of Education in New Brunswick had been consulted because, as you pointed out, that wouldn't usually be part of the process, but he did go out of his way to mention that. So I don't know what the confusion is there, that he thinks you were consulted if you were not, in fact, consulted. It's not a good idea at all, and the specific locations that were closed don't appear to make any sense. The COVID excuse was given, but of course social distancing is harder to do in less space, and it was said that they had looked at like where people live, but really? So the public works garage is open, well, nobody lives there, and both the housing project is closed. So it really didn't appear to make any sense as far as that goes. I did also have another couple of points. One was a resolution. Is this the right time to ask questions about the resolution?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the last resolution, the AB, New Brunswick Board of Education approving the shared service agreement with the East Brunswick Public Schools, additional custodial services for this year. Does this involve them needing more services that we provide or us needing more services that they provide?
Bear with me 1 second.
I can answer that question if you allow me to, Ms. Solis.
Go ahead, Mr. General.
You're referring to the shared services agreement?
Pardon me? I can't hear you, Mr.
You're referring to the shared services agreement?
Yes.
That is us entering in a shared services agreement where East Brunswick and Aramark Custodial Services has agreed to provide us, New Brunswick Public Schools, additional custodial services for the months of April, May, and June, so that we'll have 11 additional custodial staff on a short-term basis in order to achieve more cleaning due to COVID-19 protocols. So that is us increasing our staff in a short term. It's not a long-term solution, but we'll have it in place as long as we need it in order to ensure the schools are the safest place in the world to go to school.
Okay, so that's good. But Aramark, is that going to be local people?
I don't know whom they're hiring.
I mean, just there's so many people in our community that need jobs right now. It kind of sounds like bringing in people from East Brunswick, or I don't know,
No, we've always encouraged
or a
the
company that
local
contracts
staff
from
members.
wherever. It would be really, really good if those jobs could go to local people.
I agree, and we always encourage the hiring of local staff members in all of our schools for all our jobs.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have also a question through the board president, of course, but the question actually had to do with Ms. Seawood's report. She said that they had, the advisory committee of the dual language advisory committee had given a report. Could we just get an idea of what are they, how is that program going? Has it been suggested for it to expand, or?
I'd like to direct the question to Mrs. Lagos.
Yes, the Dual Language Parent Advisory Committee was not a report. It was a presentation that took place in March for parents. That's what Mrs. Seawood was referring to in reference to the dual language.
It was a presentation to the parents? Wait,
yes.
Okay, I was confused. So the presentation was to parents of children that are currently enrolled in dual language, or to prospective parents?
No, for dual language parents students that are currently enrolled. And it's pretty much similar to what we're doing with Parent University, but we also have a bilingual and dual language parent advisory committee based on code and law.
Oh, it was the same, covering the same types of things as the Parent University. Okay, that's clear.
Yes, it's.
Oh, no, I thought it was an advisory committee advising what direction the dual language program should go, and I was very interested in knowing what that might be, but now I understand. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stork. Ms. Stork, just to mention one thing, in addition to the shared services, we, New Brunswick Public Schools, are also increasing our staff, 10 full-time custodial staff members work in the schools or New Brunswick residents. So we will have a very strong custodial staff force, making sure the schools are clean.
Okay, that's great. And they will be very well trained, I trust.
Absolutely.
Because, everybody doesn't automatically know cleaning protocols. It seems very big at home. Never mind.
We have a very distinct list of protocols and have done extensive training on those protocols for all staff members.
Great, thank you.
Wrap up?
No, I'm finished, thanks.
Okay, thank you. The next member of the public, although I do not see that entered the meeting, is Jennifer Garcia. I don't recognize her on the call. If she would hit *6, but I don't believe she's on the call. Jennifer, Ms. Garcia, are you there? Seeing that she's not there, the last member of the public that registered their intent to speak is Araceli Gonzalez. I do see you in the chat, or on the participant in the call, Ms. Gonzalez. You can hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. This is Araceli. So I'm also calling today about the city's effort to close those 6 polling locations. On a personal level, I have many young cousins that are just now starting to have the ability to vote, and the system is so stacked against low-income Black, Indigenous people of color. So it's already difficult to know how to do that. Sometimes there's no access to the internet, or there's the language barrier. There's just a lot to have to deal with. And, that's not something that you can really do and help at a local level, except, organizing efforts. But in this case, this is a very obvious and egregious example of voter suppression. And I know you've all said that there's nothing really that you can do. But I disagree because I'm looking right now at an article where your challengers, the Students First candidates, have publicly stated that they object to the effort to eliminate the locations, and they're actively calling on their community members to call the Board of Election members and ask them to reconsider. So, like you have these positions of power, and you can exercise that to a large extent. You can do a lot. You can publicly call on them. You can rally your connections and the people, your friends and your families. And, you're serving these students of low income and their families. And so I would really hope that you would exercise the power that you have to be vocal about this, because, we're seeing voter suppression across the country in many different ways. And we're often told that Democrats are not, they don't do that. New Jersey is a Democratic state, and we don't do that kind of thing here. So I would hope that you would think about that, and that you would keep your students and their families' interests. Say that you don't have any influence or power, because you have a lot of influence, I think, in the decisions that you hold. So I know the candidates are calling for that, and also call on the community and the Board of Elections, and people and people in positions of, like, elected officials of every, to speak out against it. This community, again, is already incredibly disenfranchised. So it's just so upsetting to see the system be staffed even higher against them. So I'm just calling to say that I hear that all the time. Power, you do have influence, and you do have voice. So I hope that you do that responsibly. And that's all for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. The public open comments from the public section of.
And just for anyone that's tuned in this evening, a reminder that the board election will be on April 20th, and everyone that is a registered voter does receive a sample ballot in the mail. Although we're not receiving the mail-in ballots in the mail this year automatically, we do still receive our sample ballots, are in both English and Spanish, and they indicate where your polling location is. So as an informed resident of the city of New Brunswick, I urge you all to just pay attention to that mailing that you receive, to read, and just to follow the instructions on the ballot. With that being said, Mr. Janarone, we will move on in our agenda, and I will ask for a motion to approve consent agenda items, please.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood.
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla.
Yes.
Mrs. Shikaitis.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. Janarone. Item number 13, the Finance Committee report. Dr. Caldwell.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. The Finance Committee report was presented to the board. Do I hear a motion to accept it as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Take a roll call. Mr. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood.
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla.
Aye.
Mrs. Shikaitis.
Yes, I've seen on page 15.
Mr. Spencer.
Yes, I abstain on page 4 and page 11.
Varela.
Yes.
Caldwell.
Yes.
Mrs. Solis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. Generone. Item number 14, the Personnel Committee report. Mr. Ortiz?
Yes, Madam President. The Personnel Committee met on Thursday of last week. We reviewed all issues concerning human resources and personnel. I need a motion now to accept the report all members received.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood.
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla.
Yes. General,
Yes.
I would like to just make a, I would like to abstain on page 15 on the finance report. I apologize for that.
No problem. So noted for the record. Mrs. Shakaitis.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Spencer.
Yes.
Ms. Varela.
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell.
Yes.